I'm Tiffany Jernigan. I'm a software engineer at Intel. And so a little bit of background is that I was doing product development engineering for about 2.5 years at Intel. So that was digital circuit debug, no software at all. And then almost a year ago now, I ended up switching to software within Intel. So that team, everything that they do is in Go. So I actually hadn't even heard of what Go was before. They're like, yeah, we're using Go. And I was like, what's Go? So there was a lot of like, here, go start and try figuring out Go before you actually start. And they told me about the tour of Go. And then that was basically it. The rest was just kind of like, have fun, figure something out. So from all the time that I spent doing that, I determined that having the right resources from when you start is very important. Otherwise, you end up spending hours, days, weeks, a long time on Google being like, what is this? How do I do this? And, oh, this website sucks. Why did I even look at this? So lots of wasted time, a little bit of amusement, but being best friends also a Stack Overflow. Well, more of the who am I, as you know, as I already said, work for Intel, and everything I say is not reflecting Intel, so if I say anything wrong, it's not their fault. I majored in electrical engineering at Georgia Tech. I am co-organizer of the Docker PDX Meetup, so if any of you guys are in Portland, you should go to it. So outside of software and tech stuff, I like gymnastics. Mysteries are awesome. I like drawing. The little guy at the bottom there is the turtle, first revision of the turtle for the project I'm working on. Obviously, spending time with family friends, and I am obsessed with sour gummies. I went to Berlin recently and may have filled a bunch of my luggage up with Haribo. And then I'm learning French. So that was enough about me. We don't care about me. So who are you guys? I'm assuming you probably have heard of Go, even if it was today when you read about this talk. You're probably one of the people on the list that are maybe interested in learning the language. You may already know some of it and want to learn more. You want to start on the right foot instead of wasting lots of time trying to figure something out, and then you could have had these resources or talked to someone and figured it out way more quickly. Or you already know it really well, and you possibly want to help other people learn. So who here has no experience with Go whatsoever? Oh, wow. Okay. So anyone here who has the experience and possibly wanting to help other people? Few? Okay. And who doesn't fit into any category on this list at all, and you're just here? Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Okay, so why do you want to learn Go? So Go right now is in this place that used to be where Node.js or previously Ruby, Python were, where it's very niche, and it's sorry, I'm nervous. So Go is adapted for concurrent I/O. It's very readable and it's fast. It's readable in that Go requires that you follow a certain formatting, and if you don't, it's considered incorrect. It compiles into single binaries. So since it is a lot faster than, say, compiling for C, I know you really want to be the gopher on the chair there and having little sword fights while your code's compiling, but it's not going to happen as often, sorry. It's great for distributed systems and microservices. So this is a little outline of what I'm going to be talking about today. So where do you want to begin? More websites, because the where to begin starts with websites. Tooling, training, coding practice, communities, and conferences. So where to begin? So as I mentioned earlier, I started off at the Tour of Go, which is where I think that everyone should probably start off with. So the Tour of Go, one of the great things about it is that it's available in many languages, so people all over the world can try learning Go. You can have it available offline, so you can just download it and have it on your machine. You don't need to be on the internet. It starts on the basics and goes through concurrency. Basically, there are a bunch of examples and you can run them. You can edit the code, see what happens as an actual compiler there, so it'll give you compile errors. And then there are a few examples throughout that you can start typing in. So let's see if this actually pops up how I want it to. Nope. The formatting on here is terrible. Okay. So this is the first page of the tour of Go. So what you can, it gives you a little explanation about it. You can, so for formatting, which is what I was mentioning earlier, so say if you have a bunch of spaces, it doesn't like that, it'll reformat it back to how Go wants it. And you can hit run, and then it says hello. And I was going to try pronouncing that. I actually called my mom earlier to ask how you pronounce that, but I'm not going to try. So what I was saying earlier about the many languages, so there's a bunch of different ones. You could click like French, and then it goes there. The code part is not in French whatsoever, but all the explanations on the side are. So hopefully you can read the other part too. And then the offline part, you just have the Go tool tour. And then so what I was mentioning earlier about how it goes from basics to concurrency, here you have a bunch of the basics, and then methods and interfaces and concurrency. So if you say click on methods and interfaces, it'll give you a bunch of different examples, and then here, it's like, here's an exercise. So it'll have the code, and it's all, you can turn syntax off if you are a color hater. And then, so basically, yeah, you can just go through, edit the code. It doesn't say yes, you're right or not, so you can look over to the left. It'll tell you what it expects you to have, and if yours doesn't look like that, you're probably doing it wrong. So that's the tour of Go, but all right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what I saw about the offline mode, does that mean that I can just like apt-get install Go and then just run Go tool tour?
You should be able
Right off the bat? That's awesome. Okay.
I'll test that later before I break all the things, since it doesn't like scaling over here.
Sure.
And you can also download it from GitHub and just play with it on there too. All right. Okay, so there we go. All right, so Go docs. Sometimes there's like, I don't know if people are familiar with like Java docs or some of the other languages that have docs, but basically it goes and it'll go through your code, and it'll have the comments, etc., that will explain what that code does. If you want to read more about what it actually is, I put a link here. You can also have this offline, so you can be in the middle of nowhere, and you can learn Go with the trees and the bears and whatever else. So if we go to the Go docs, so there's all the packages that are part of Go in here. So like say if I wanted to go to tar, it has an index which tells you what all the different functions are, and then some of them have examples. So for the examples, you can actually run them and change them however you want, just like the tour of Go. And then so say if you go over to any of these functions, so this one's a function here, file info header, and it has the explanation of what it is. So if you want to see where that's coming from, which is from the source code, you can click on that, and it jumps you directly to it, and this is where it was pulling the GoDoc information from, and then you can look through the code. So source code. The great thing about that is, like, sometimes, sure, you want the explanation of how does this work, but oftentimes you can understand, if you know some of the basic of the code and you want to know how's this tar function working or how's this other function working, it might make more sense if you just look through the code and you see each step of what they're doing along the way. And then I also put the GitHub link, so if you want to see it in the just like easier format there, or pull it down to your machine if you don't already have it. So more websites, because there are a lot of them. So code examples, there are a lot of websites that had code examples. So the first one that I came across was Go by example. It basically has a bunch of topics in Go, and it lists all of those topics, and you can click on it and it'll have an example, and on the left side it'll have a bunch of like a verbose explanation of this is all what the code is doing, and on the right it'll have the code and it'll show you the output as well. So for that, here's a screenshot of a small portion of it because it's way too long to fit in the screen. So yeah, there's just like the hello world, and then it just continues on, and you have maps, and if you just click on it. So this one's the one for arrays. You can see it has a bunch of explanations there, and then it has a bunch of the code as well, and all of what happens if you hit go run for that. So another code example site that I was looking at was Socket Loop. So if you're on Linux and you're like, I need to untar this file, it's pretty easy. You just do tar -xvf and your file and you're done. But it's not that simple if you want to do it in Go. So I was looking, oh hey, here's this package for tar, but what exactly do you have to do each step of the way? Because you need other packages, other things as well, such as opening the file, copying, and I was like, I don't know exactly where to start here. So Google, came across Socket Loop, and theirs is a little different than Go by example, in that instead of having it by like a bunch of categories, it's usually more of trying to do a certain task, and such as like I want to untar a file versus what are arrays. It has both, but also it has it's a little harder to read through though, because the other one has all the topics in a row. This one you kind of have to search, and instead of the comments on the side, it actually has inline comments and generally really long blocks of code. So this is a small, tiny version of untar. I don't know if you can even read that. There's no point to. But it's very long, and it keeps going. But as you can see, it's very different than how Go by example is. So blogs. Blogs are different in that sometimes, or a lot of the, depending on whose blog it is or what the topic is, you can have a bunch of code, but they are usually more descriptive of you can use in this case, this is what I think of it, this is why it's good, this is why it sucks. So the first one that I came across is, well, the official Go blog, because, I mean, the first thing that you come up with when you look for Go is probably something written by the people who made Go. So this one has a bunch of descriptions written by people who work at Google in Go. And it had, like, the best part, I think, is how it has super detailed descriptions of every single major release. So if you want to go look at 1.6 or 1.5, it has probably several pages worth of what all they changed and how they made things better. So another one is Dave Cheney's blog. He's very prominent in the Go community. He writes pretty frequent posts. The easiest way to find out is either like looking at his page, or on Twitter he's constantly putting links up for a new thing that he was writing about. So I went to his page and found out at first because I was wanting to look more into channels. I looked at, obviously, the other sites, but I wanted more specific examples and different scenarios. So one of the things that here he has is, like, if you just go and click on it, there's a tag, and it has it for channels. So it has basically every single thing that he has for channels, like sending to a nil channel blocks forever, things that you may not necessarily find in an example code. And then he also has a bunch of resources for new programmers. So, cute little Gopher. And then there's so much here. There's books, installing IDEs, online resources, tutorials, etc., etc. And then, so for this one, it's just an example to show you a subsection of his blog, which is something that I came across because I was having a closed channel panic. I actually wasn't sure it was closed. I was like, oh, hey, this is panicking. Why? And then I came across this. So, more blogs. There's Bill Kennedy's blog. He does a bunch of workshops, which I will mention a little bit more about later. And he also co-authored a book. And he has a bunch of great examples too. So here's one of this is from 2014. If you want to know how to use pointers in Go, he has a very long description with some code that you can go and read about using pointers in Go, and many other topics as well. And then the last blog that I want to mention is Gopher Academy. The great thing about this one is there are blog posts written by quite a few people, so it's not just one person's ideas. So the next thing is training. So the easiest thing to do for training is online training because you don't have to go somewhere to go do that. So Todd McLeod, he has YouTube trainings where there are a bunch of videos and like intro videos for that, and he also on his GitHub has the examples and going through the code yourself. And then there's Pluralsight. So Nigel Pluton, he does a bunch of training videos. He does one for Docker as well, and it has all the different topics, and he'll spend like 5 minutes, 20 minutes on each separate one explaining how all the things work. So I personally prefer workshops more than online because you actually have someone that you can go and talk to. So I didn't go to this until several months after I started Go, and I wish I had gone a lot earlier because basically it was 2 days of 9 to 5 of starting from the very basic Go concepts all the way through more advanced ones such as concurrency. And it was constantly grabbing your attention, and he would go through, draw out some examples, code some examples, run through the Go playground with how these things ran, and then there would be things at the end where you spent a little while trying to do a exercise, and if you had questions, you could be like, hey, how do I do this? So you had someone to help you right there and then. So I had mentioned earlier that Bill does everything. So I had mentioned earlier that he also co-authored a book. So the first one here is the Go programming language. I assume many people have heard of the C programming language by Kernighan and Ritchie. Well, Kernighan is from one of the authors for that. And then, yeah, there's Go in Action. And the great thing about that one is there's the code samples from the book they have online. So you don't have to go and manually type up everything they do there just because you want to run something or tweak it. You can just pull it down and play with it. So there were examples both in the workshop and in the book. So this one's for unbuffered channels, showing that if you are blocking until somebody receives. So you can see the little guy handing it off, and then the other one waiting for him to actually go and grab it. So, tools. I mentioned very slightly that there's the Go playground. The playground is similar to the tour in that it's an online editor. You can just run it on there. It doesn't have examples there, but a few great things about the playground is that if you're like, I just want to test this little thing, see what happens, how it works, and I don't want to have to open an editor, go run, go install, or go build, just go here, write a little bit of code, and you can test it, and you can also create a little link to share with whoever you want. So that's great if you have something small that you want to do or something that can fit into just what would be one file. But if you're working with a bunch of packages and a bunch of different files, you can't really do that there. So at that point, you would probably want an editor. I don't know. Some people might like Notepad. I don't because it doesn't do anything besides your text. So there are 3 editors that I've played with so far. I started off with Sublime, and I still use Vim depending on what computer, etc. that I'm on, and VS Code. So right now I'm just sticking with VS Code. Maybe I'll try Sublime again since they've started making updates to it. But there are a few reasons that I really like using these editors over just Notepad. And so for those, they have a bunch of tools. I mentioned earlier how if you edit something, like you add a bunch of spaces, it'll reformat it back to how the standard for Go is. And I have it set so it's format on save. So basically I just type something, it's not edited in the right line, or I have it one line up too high, etc. If I just hit save and it formats it for me, and I don't have to do anything. So another useful one is autocomplete. It does not work like how that Google thing down there says, where you just start typing and it tells you something about studying in a velociraptor. So for this one, say there was the FMT, so you could hit F, and it'll start showing all the options that are with that. And it's very useful when you're learning. Say if you have a struct and you're trying to figure out how is this working. You type the name of the struct, you hit period, it'll show you all the different fields that are in there. Or you're having some package and you want to know what are some of the functions that I can use in there in this case. So you hit that function name, fmt dot, and it'll be like println, printf, etc. Another useful one is godef. So say you have many, many files and there's this function and you're like, where did this come from? And instead of doing like a search on like your entire repo, trying to figure out if it's the right one, especially if you have multiple packages that have a function with the exact same name. For this, it'll jump you to where that code is defined. And then there's Go imports, which I really like because, so if you start adding code and you have a function, say, fmt.println, instead of having to manually type in the imports every single package that you're using, it will automatically add or remove it there, depending on if you add it or delete it. Thanks to somebody in this room. Okay, so I am going to show some examples.
I came in late. Isn't there some sort of development environment that doesn't require you to run 20 little tools? Some development environment like Eclipse, something based on Eclipse or something else?
Well,
to do Go coding?
This one's not so much like running, it's running those, but you only have to install, like, so VS Code, you can install VS Code Go. And it has all those things already in it. Or there's, Eclipse, you can have other packages for Go, or IntelliJ. You don't have to install each separate one manually.
These are the guts of all like the tooling that are shipped separately, but all the editors integrate with all of them, so you can use them.
So if I install IntelliJ or Go,
There is an IntelliJ Go plugin that uses all this tool.
Okay, so alright, so what I was saying earlier, so say if you can see you have all the things that are imported. This is from my work code, which is open sourced, so not doing anything wrong here. So there's res here, and you're like, hey, I want to see what is that. So you could start doing fm. So actually, let's just have it randomly over here. So fmt.println of res. So if I hit save, what do you guys expect will happen?
Fix the indentation.
Okay, so it should. Yep, there we go. It does that. And it should have, but, oh, I typoed. All right, so it did that. So now when I type it correctly, Go imports goes and added FMT up there. And then say if I comment it out, it got rid of it too.
That's great.
And then, so what I was saying earlier about the autocomplete. So if I type C, it'll show me all the things that I can use that are C. And then I hit the period, and then it'll have all the different things inside of there that I can use. And it'll give me example, like say what it is. Here it's a function, and these are the parameters that you can give it, and this is what it outputs. Which is super, super useful, especially if you're like, is this what I think this is? You don't have to go and search around to figure out if that's right.
Which editor are you using now?
This is VS Code. VS Code. It's Visual Studio Code. It's the free Microsoft Visual Studio. You can do stuff like this in Vim too. So let's see. So, like, let's see. Yeah, see if I do fmt dot, it'll show me all the, a bunch of the different things that you can use in there. And I'm not exactly. I think this is just the Vim Go. So, yeah. And then you can do all that stuff in Sublime. Basically, there are a lot of editors that you can do that stuff with. This is just what I happen to use. Okay, so now that you have those tools and you have those websites that you can go look at, you still need to actually go and continue practicing your coding. Reading helps only so much, I feel, with coding. You need to actually sit down and try being like, I need to do this. I need to make FizzBuzz or Hello World or whatever it is. If you actually go and try doing it, it's a lot more helpful. So the first part, I think, this is where I started at because I didn't know Go. Actually, I didn't have a very strong software background either since I had electrical engineering as my degree. So I started off at testing, which is both a great place to start and it's very important anyway. You should test your code. So I started off at unit tests. Since it requires less context, it's just for that one package or that one file. Integration testing, though, it is a lot more broad. It touches a bunch of other things, so you have to understand both how your packages and file are working as well as other things. And then after that is when I actually moved over to coding features and not just testing things, because I did all the testing, I know how the general thing works, so I can start adding new code to make it better. And then repeat, because even though you've made a feature, you better test it as well. So projects. If you've coded before and have made some other projects, it's a great place to start of redoing the same thing in Go because you know exactly what you expect to happen with it. Otherwise, you can go find a project to do. You can go to Google. You can go, there's on the Golang GitHub, they have a list of a ton of projects that you can look at. I put a picture of Snap here because it's open source and this is what I'm working on. So if you guys like logging and monitoring, you should go check it out and add code to that. So if I go to that, so this is the table. I took a screenshot of the table of contents. This is just a little small snippet of what there is. So you could find projects are in Go. These are all in Go, in astronomy, in continuous integration, etc. So just whatever thing you're like, I'm interested in doing something on this. Go click there, and there's going to be a ton of options that you have there to work on. So coding challenges. So these ones aren't specific to Go. They're kind of like how the tour of Go is, in that it asks you, hey, I want you to code this thing, and then go and code it, except for the difference is here, it'll actually tell you if you're right or wrong. You can do it in other languages, but if you're trying to learn Go, you should probably do it in Go. So for HackerRank, that one is like the tour where you have the little editor right there and you can type in it. But CodeEval, that one you actually have to do it on your machine and upload the file to them. And then, so it's been on hiatus for a while, but there's the Golang challenge every single month where there's a certain task that you have to do and a bunch of people in the community submit it and there's different places and you can win things if you get in the top, I don't remember what places. So that should start again in July, I think. So that was a lot about like tooling and websites and things that you can go do on your own, where you don't need anyone else basically. But then there's also communities, which are really helpful. So some of the communities, like say if you're in software work, especially if your group's using Go, you should go ask questions to your coworkers. You can find mentors. There is nothing wrong with going and asking questions. In fact, I think you should. At a certain point, if you're spending so much time trying to figure something out, it could have been better spent just asking someone, hey, how do I do this? And you can move forward and keep learning. So there might be communities at work if you have any. And then online, some of the great ones are, there's Gopher Slack. How many people in here use Slack? Okay, a lot. So there's Gopher Slack. There's tons of people in there from the community. There are a bunch of channels. There's general where people just post tons of questions there. There's CoreOS Docker. There's one for it's Golang newbies for people who are new to Go. And people respond so quickly there to your questions. So if you don't have someone to easily just go turn and ask right next to you, that's a great place to do that. The only downside is that people are typing in there so quickly, so if you don't check it for a few hours, you have no idea what's going on, and you have to scroll all the way up to find things. And it's hard to search by topic. So that's one of the good things about the Go Nuts Google group. It's a forum style where each post is a question, so you can go and be like, oh, hey, I see this person has this question. What did people say to that? But it's not as quick of a response with that, and it's not as interactive. I mean, it's a forum versus just general IMing conversation with each other. So this is the screenshot of the Golang newbies. Somebody was asking a question, people responding. And then this is the Golang Nuts, where you can see also a bunch of questions, and you can click on those and see what people said to them. So after that, there's a bunch of meetups and organizations. So like in Portland, we have PDX Go. Every month there's a few speakers who come and talk about whatever Go topic they want to discuss, or there's just ones such as like book review clubs, where say for the Go in Action, people want to go and, like, I was actually going to one of those where every week or 2 weeks you had to read one of the chapters, and then you would all come and discuss the concepts in there. If you didn't understand something, you can ask it and just talk about it. And that was on meetup.com. I assume lots of areas have ones for themselves, so you can probably just look up Go in there. So there's also GoBridge, which is targeted for underrepresented communities. And there's Women Who Go, who are for people who identify as women as well. So meetups are kind of like little mini conferences. There's usually maybe only a few speakers and not nearly as many people who show up. You're not going to have probably not going to have thousands of people showing up at your meetup. So conferences, large-scale versions of meetups, you have lots of topics that people are discussing, lots of people there, way more people that you can go and meet, go to events, and there's many ones that are actually just for Go. So there's a long list of different ones. It says when they are, which ones have already happened. So the biggest Go conference is GopherCon, which is coming up soon in Denver. And even if you can't attend them, one of the great things is that they'll end up posting videos as well as slides for the talks. So even if you do go, you can't sit in maybe every single talk if there's more than one track going. So if you go the one that you really want to see, later when it's uploaded for the other one, you can go watch the other one. And you can also slow it down or speed it up or do it on your own time. So there's actually a bunch of GopherCons now. There's GopherCon in India, Dubai, China, and I probably missed some, but there's several there. And they're cute little mascots. And then there's also upcoming our Golang UK, which is in UK, and Dago, which is in Paris. And then a bunch of the links for those as well. I definitely recommend trying to go to one of the conferences there because some of the topics are insanely fascinating. You can go online and see what if it's already been announced for them, you should be able to see who's speaking and what are they talking about. And then there's also Gotham Go, which is a little bit smaller. It's in New York. Yeah, that guy. And there's others too. I didn't list everything. That's what the other link is for you guys to check that out. So, image credits, because I didn't draw anything besides the turtle. And then, yeah, thanks for showing up. I put the slides on SpeakerDeck, and that's my Twitter, if anyone wants to ask me questions after this. So, yeah, anybody have any questions?
Can I say two things?
Yes. No, definitely not.
Okay.
Go for it.
If you want to do a search, do Golang instead of just Go, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. You can try Go. Some of it probably will show up, but you'll have a better. I've definitely searched something in Go and been like, this is not what I'm looking for at all. Maybe the game. So yeah, I would probably stick with Golang or Google Go.
The second thing is that the language originally was created by Google.
Yes.
And as a result, they only implemented things that they cared about. So a lot of things that you would think would be in there aren't. A lot of things, like as an example, they put in G,
Or PC.
variable name plus plus, but they didn't put in plus plus a variable name because they thought one was enough. There are lots of things like that in there. So you may try something that you think should work, but they didn't think that it was necessary, and so they didn't put it in. So you get half of it, whatever. So it's kind of quirky, but once you get used to it, it's okay.
I guess one of the things that they were trying to do is that you can do the same thing 50 million ways. That way it makes it a lot more readable if everyone is writing a certain thing a certain way.
Plus plus is a statement, it's not an expression. So
Right,
it doesn't
that's
make sense to have pre-conversion. Swift did the same thing for the same reasons.
They were trying to make it simpler for the compiler to actually understand what you're trying to make it do and give you real errors up front, as opposed to things like Python that waste time.
If I was going to try to get involved in the Go community to participate or contribute somehow, do you have any recommendations for like what paths to take or what options are available?
So one thing, as I was mentioning, was Meetup.com. If you can easily go there, see there's a Go community. And if they have meetings already scheduled on there, you can go to Gopher Slack. See, there's on there. There's usually little groups for different locations. Like there's one for Portland over there. So the people from Portland are discussing things there. Sometimes you can find people on Twitter who are discussing it. I actually didn't start using Twitter until a little over. Actually less than a year ago. I thought it was kind of silly and that people just posted about what their new shoes and everything, and then I found out that people actually talk about a bunch of technical things on there and share articles or post really cool things. So that's a great place. Finding people who are in that area, who are in the Go community, and being like, hey, do you know of what there is in that location? What can I join? And then going to conferences, pretty much any of the locations as well. Yeah.
I've also had a lot of success just picking a project, an open source project that
Yeah.
I'm using and just trying to make a patch for it,
Yeah, that long list that I didn't actually show, but you'll see if you go look at it and scroll through many pages worth of projects on there. If there's something interesting, then you'll obviously find people who work on Go who are interested in that same topic that you are.
Another thing, it's available on, I have it running on Mac, I have it running on a regular PC, I have it running on a BeagleBone Black, I have it running meaning you can compile on and execute the program on Raspberry Pi. Almost anything, somebody will have ported it. And it works fine, on that level of machine as well.
Mm-hmm.
If I may recommend, there's the Golang weekly newsletter.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's a really great resource.
Yeah, it sends out, every week you'll get a bunch of posts and things that you can go read up on Go. And they don't over-spam you either, which is nice. Yep.
So what's your opinion on managing modules with Go that you require for your projects?
Can you elaborate a little bit more?
The new vendoring stuff and
Oh, okay.
Chinese projects.
Well, so far, mostly I've been using GoDup, which, they all are great in some ways. I'm not going to share too much on that because I haven't been testing too much of one versus the other. For vendoring, I guess it's great in that if something suddenly changes, they updated their code, if you have it saved off, you're not breaking all of your stuff immediately, but then you might get really behind in what's changed as well. And then for GoDup, it pulls you can set it for a certain release, but then you can also have it pulling the latest one. And we did that, and suddenly all of our code was broken. So there's not really, I don't think there's a right answer at this point for that one. Any other questions? Yeah.
How much is the language in flux? I mean, it's a new language. Are they adding new commands and making deprecations and stuff to the language and changing code? So if you upgrade to a newer version of Go, then all the code you wrote doesn't work anymore?
It's not that extreme. It is changing. I mean, it's at 1.6. There's still going to be lots of changes, but it's not to the point that suddenly your code just doesn't work as soon as you get a new release.
Well, when Go 1.0
Yeah.
came out, it came with a compatibility promise that code written in March of 2002 or 2012 continues to work. And so nothing has been removed or changed or broken. There have been additions only.
Cool.
What type of problems were you solving at Intel to make you guys want to use Go?
So
Currency things?
we're definitely using concurrency. The project I'm working on is a open source telemetry framework where you can create plugins that you can collect, process, and publish data. You have the client and server and the REST API and a lot of stuff. So we have this thing called we have tasks. So you load the plugins that you want and you have a task and you can watch. So it will go in through and it'll do a get and it'll continually print out every, like say if you have PSUtil and it's collecting metric data from that. And that a lot of that is we're using Go routines and channels. And then say what I was doing recently is we have our server or daemon and I go and kill that. I end up having a channel that I'm looking for that I am closing and that the client sees and it realizes snapd is closed, so it kills itself as well. So yeah, there's a lot of our code is for concurrency and yeah.
Is there any aspect of the language or maybe a library that you've been using that really made you happy when you used it, like something that got you really excited about that aspect of Go or of the Go libraries?
I don't know if there's like something specific because I'm using so many different random ones to do each different task.
Sure.
So I'm not sure.
One of the things that it does really well that I don't use is any web-based stuff does really well. Any cloud-based stuff does really well. The kinds of things that Google wants are in there, and it's very simple to use and very fast and very easy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of projects nowadays that are using it, like Docker, Kubernetes, CoreOS for Rocket. So.
Just like concurrency as an example, they want to do concurrency that is massive, and so concurrency is very efficient, and it costs very little to use concurrency within Go because they want it and they've got it in there, and it's engineered right. It's really good.
Like I see a lot of DevOps tools these days that are like pretty much all using Go, and I was just curious if there was a reason for that. Like I don't know, in your opinion, like why? Versus all the HashiCorp tools, they all use Go. Like I just saw these new tools by like these guys called Commvault, and they all use Go. And yeah, just curious.
Well, one of the big things is concurrency. I don't have a huge big picture on this. If you turn around and ask the person behind you, you'll be able to answer that.
I think it might also be particularly helpful for DevOps type things because it's very easy to deploy. So it creates very simple static binaries that are very easy to push out to a lot of servers, not having to maintain like dynamic linked libraries and things like that. I mean, that's one thing that's particularly helpful about it.
That's a good one.
And cross-compiling, sure. Yeah. Being able to compile on a Mac workstation any binary that will run on Linux.
Is there any libraries for talking directly to hardware, like GPIO pins, like on a Raspberry Pi or something like that for Go?
Yes, they run my Christmas lights.
Nice.
My garage door.
Nice.
Any other ones? Okay, well, thanks for coming to my first conference talk ever.
Thank you.